Today I'll speak about like a very interesting design problem that we had. So this was like a few years back. The customer came to us and the customer was already living in a very old house. Is what the customer said, and then we basically went and did the site visit. The house was basically we were driving through lush plantations, and we went in a little bit, and suddenly we stopped in front of like a really old house. Some tarpaulins put in front. There was a pile of logs to one side. I remember the well was there, and the house was literally on a cliff, right? It was and they basically they were believers in Vastu and all that, so they wanted the house to be built in the exact same location. So basically what we found there was that there was a long side with like a narrow entry, a narrow road, and but in the middle of this thing, and on the back side, on the right side, when we looked, was a huge retaining wall, and on the other side was a huge cliff, and the entrance road through the plantation, whatever was coming, was actually coming through this, like a little bit through the, the cliffside, and it was winding around the entire place, and then, like almost going around, I don't know, like 100 meters, 150 meters, it was reaching this point where, the narrow, entrance to the place was there. Now, so this was one possible entrance, and then it certainly struck us that, the cliff side could be another possible entrance. So we climbed down the cliff, walked from, looked from there, but then what we actually saw was a wall, like a retaining wall kind of thing, which was almost, like 1.5 floors high, and the house was, the existing house was not even like visible there. But the customer and the people living in the house said that that their favorite space in their current house was to basically spend time towards the cliffside, where they could basically see the birds, the leaves, the flowers, the fruits, basically the lush greenery. The canopy was the height at which the house was basically included, and that gave us this idea that, okay, why don't we really look at that as the entrance of the house. So what we did was we carved out a small portion of the budget to create a step, and then we broke down this retaining wall, and we took some of the mud and we created layered terraces on the cliffside. Rather than it being a one steep cliff, we created layered terraces. Instead of that stretch being like a narrow stretch towards the cliffside, we created layers there, and we enhanced these layers by just creating like a roof, nothing else, just a little bit of the roof item. And we took the stones from the existing retaining wall, and we reused the same stones to build like a layered retaining wall in this entire thing. So although this was like a like a 2,000 square foot house, it would essentially look like a full resort kind of thing. The original house was called Girimandhiram. The house, after we finished, was going to be named Girimandhiram. So that gave us an idea that, okay, maybe we can model it around the hills, different terraces, levels. So we kind of modeled it around the view of the view of the hills that you get, like one layer of hills, another layer behind, and like the final house on the top. The entrance, which was which you could find after climbing up the layer of stairs, and where the car park area was, all the entrance we created right after the sit out. When you enter the main door, we created a double height space with like basically the roofing height was further enhanced because it was a gable roof on top of it, a tile roof, and this was at like a slightly lower level. And then at the level of the house, we actually created another courtyard after it, which created the puja room. So how this actually created the effect that this created was, so you open the front door to see like a double height space, and then leading to a 1.5 height space, and like your view would directly fall into the puja room. So the nice the deity was basically kept there, and and that would essentially bring in a whole lot of light. So we created the courtyard would also bring in light, and from the other side the glass window would also bring in light. So very airy, very spacious kind of looking. So you open the door and you feel like this is again like a resort kind of feeling, and all of this at like a shoestring budget. So again, something that we're very proud of there, what we could achieve there.